Hey, welcome back to This Is Not a Podcast. It's not exactly a live stream. This is just my thoughts for Rob Markman. Listen, y'all know the name of the game, right? The more drama, the more traffic. Everybody's still talking about Kendrick and Drake. And of course, I'm going to dive back into it when I feel like we get major developments or when I just feel like I have something to say. But for today, for me, nothing felt more important than saluting the 30-year anniversary for another classic album that shaped hip hop. If y'all were with me last week, I talked about Illmatic and the 30th anniversary of Illmatic. And, today, man, on April 26, 1994, OutKast dropped their debut album, Southernplayalisticadillacmuzik. Shout out to everybody who checked out the Illmatic video, and shout out to everybody who clicked on this one too. Ultimately, my hope for this channel is, I want it to be a place where we could celebrate music. And it's tough because I don't know the age of the audience yet. I be in the comments. I respond to a lot of y'all. I appreciate y'all. But maybe y'all aren't as grown as me. I'd imagine some of y'all were there, might be closer to my age. Maybe some of y'all never heard of the first OutKast album, and this could be your intro. So, I just don't know the entry point. Like, I don't know, like what information do I give is already known, is already out there. What information is new information. So we're going to figure this out for this channel. But, I mean, this album is a monster, man. Like really, when you look back on it, and maybe it wasn't apparent at the time, but 30 years ago when this dropped, hip hop was on a course to change forever. And this album, was the catalyst for it, man. So this is my copy right here, man. OutKast, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music. It's important to me because, I'm just gonna flat out say, I think OutKast is the greatest hip hop group of all time. They're definitely my favorite hip hop group of all time, and I think they're the greatest hip hop group of all time. With respect to Run DMC broke down doors, right? Like, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for Run DMC. NWA did what they did, and it can't be duplicated. What they did for gangster rap, what they did for just the political message. Like, NWA was like street and hood, and we classified them with gangster rap and birthing gangster rap, which they did. But they're also political in the same way, in a lot of the same ways that Public Enemy was. So NWA, super revolutionary group. There's Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang just changed the way that, not just how hip hop sounded, but how we do business. How 9 solo members of a group can each negotiate solo deals. That was unheard of before Wu-Tang. You got Tribe Called Quest, like 3-6 Mafia is so influential. You got Bone Thugs, Mobb Deep, Migos in the modern day. But to me, OutKast is the greatest. Y'all can feel different. So boom. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Y'all know that, right? But I just didn't listen to New York music. A lot of times, I didn't even know where a rapper was from when I first heard it. I remember a friend of mine when I was a kid let me hold his NWA tape, and I would sneak to listen because I ain't want my mother knowing that I was listening to that. I thought I would get in trouble. Years later, I found out she didn't really care that much. That same friend lent me his Ghetto Boys mixtape. So we're in Brooklyn, we're in New York at the time, so we're listening to NWA, we're listening to Ghetto Boys. The first cassettes that I ever bought with my own money when I was able to get my own money and get my own tapes was I'll never forget, it was Crisscross, Totally Crossed Out. They're from Atlanta. Shout out to JD, Jermaine Dupri. And, at that same time, I bought the Tribe Called Quest, the Scenario, the maxi single on the same day. They from Queens, New York. I love Tribe Called Quest. A few years later, I graduated to CDs. So once I had my little CD collection, I had Wu-Tang, I had Souls of Mischief. They was from Oakland. I had Cypress Hill, who was from California. Of course, Nas, Illmatic. I had the Onyx CD, and eventually got OutKast. It took me a while to get into OutKast. But, also shows like Yo MTV Raps, Video Music Box, Rap City, while radio was playing, maybe was more local. And even New York radio back then, Hot 97, we were hearing Dre and Snoop on the radio. We were hearing Warren G on the radio. We were hearing a lot of music from other places, but radio only plays so much. So when you would turn on Rap City, which is a national, they had to play a little bit of everything, or Yo MTV Raps, we got opened up to more like music from different places. So for me personally, just as a fan, I was never into rappers that were just from my city. And I know a lot of New Yorkers, especially in the 80s and 90s, get that criticism. But me and my friends, we weren't like that. You know, but I say this, OutKast for me, when I first heard OutKast, that was the first time that I saw Atlanta. It was the first time that I'm like, oh, that's how they talk. Oh, that's how they dress. That's the slang they use. That's the sound. Like, yo, this place look cool as hell. Like, you know what I'm saying? Um, of course, there was music from Atlanta before, right? Kilo Ali, MC Shadi, Raheem the Dream. But I didn't know much about those guys. Like that wasn't on my radar. Criss Cross was my first cassette. They were from Atlanta. Another Bad Creation was from Atlanta, but they didn't like scream Atlanta. You know, I think Criss Cross, it was more about their clothes were backwards, and Jump to me at the time sounded like a Naughty by Nature record. Like it wasn't so much about where Criss Cross was from, more so than it was like, oh, there's these kids who are my age who are doing it. That was the appeal. But sound wise, I felt like they could be from anywhere. Also got to give love to Arrested Development. They were a huge group from Atlanta. I mean, they won Grammys. They had top 10 Billboard Hot 100 hits. Mr. Wendell, Tennessee. They had a remake of Everyday People. They went 4 times platinum. And it's crazy because they're hardly ever mentioned as pioneers when we talk about the South and we talk about Atlanta and hip hop. I don't know why. Maybe I'll do something on Arrested Development later on. But when I was a kid, though, I thought they were from Tennessee because their single was called Tennessee. I just assumed they was from Tennessee. I found out that they was from Atlanta later, or at least they formed in Atlanta, right? But anyway, I say all this to acknowledge what came before OutKast, right? There were absolutely groups that came before OutKast. But OutKast was the first time, at least for me, and I feel like for a lot of hip hop artists, it was the first time that we got to see, like if you wasn't from Atlanta, it was the first time we got to see what Atlanta was all about, and that was cool. So the story goes like this. Andre and Big Boy met in high school and, developed a reputation for rapping and being real nice with it. They were signed by the late Rico Wade, who just passed away just a couple of weeks ago. Rest in peace to Rico Wade. They were signed to Rico Wade and Organized Noise. So that's Rico, Ray Murray, Sleepy Brown. So they were signed to Organized Noise in the production deal. And then Organized Noise took OutKast to L.A. Reid and Babyface's LaFace Records. And while Dre and Big Boy were still in high school, they were signed to LaFace. So they got their first record deal while they were still in high school. There was a remix to TLC, What About Your Friends, in 1992. OutKast was on that. And most people didn't hear that. I remember the single. I remember the remix. You had the tape, and a lot of times a song would get like 5 different remixes back then. So I remember the remix, but I can't say like OutKast like super stood out to me. Then I had to go back and be like, oh, those are those guys on the TLC remix. But they was on the TLC remix, What About Your Friends, in 92. And then in 93, they dropped Players Ball, which was their first single as a part of LaFace Family Christmas album, right? So there's one of those facts that I take for granted. I assume that everybody knows this. But again, like I said in the beginning, I don't know what age, the audience and who's watching this is. But this was always like a cool fun fact. This is one of my favorite fun facts in hip hop. But if you weren't around back then, you may not know this. OutKast Players Ball was the first single that they ever released, and it was on LaFace Family Christmas album. And if you listen to Players Ball now, there was an original version. They ended up switching up some lyrics to what you hear on the album, but not a lot. But basically, Players Ball originally was a Christmas song, but it was like an anti-Christmas song, right? It was like, yo, it's Christmas in the rest of the world, but in the hood, the same things are going on. And that's why you hear sleigh bells in the beat. Like if you didn't know this, and listen to Players Ball, listen to the album version right now, and you'll hear it. On the original version, it's pretty clear. They changed a lot of lyrics again, but even if you listen to the version that's on Southern Playalistic, it'll blow your mind. You'll be like, yo, this was a Christmas song the whole time. Even if you listen to the first line, right? It's beginning to look like what? It's beginning to look like what? Follow my every step. That's a reference to, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. So that was always just a fun fact for me, right? Another fun fact is Diddy directed, I don't know, again, I feel like everybody should know this, but you take that for granted. Diddy directed the music video for Players Ball. So OutKast's very first video was directed by Puff. I remember watching the video, right? And that's really what stood out to me. It was probably like on Rap City. And as soon as Dre started rapping, he's wearing the Atlanta Braves jersey. And we get into the video, and it's clear that they're not in New York, right? It's clear that they're not in New Jersey. I'm like, oh, this is like no place that I've seen. It's brand new. And I remember even like listening to the lyrics and some of the slang or some of the things they were saying, like I didn't get all the way, like, you know, Big Boy rapping about the package stores closed. I didn't know what a package store was. I was like, what's a package store? Like, you know, I was always in the lyrics and analyzing lyrics then and trying to understand the lyrics to everything I was listening to. So I was like, all right, it's slang, like it's dope, but they live way different from us. So Players Ball comes out at the end of 93, the video hits, and on April 26, 94, the album drops. Now, I'm going to be lying if I said I copped the album on the first day. I copped Illmatic on the first day, but that was rare for me. Like, you know, Ready to Die comes out a couple of months later. I didn't get Ready to Die on the first day that it dropped. Because I ain't had money like that. Like sometimes it was like, yo, when I had cash, I would buy CDs, but you know, I had to maybe save up for it, or maybe I was short. So I didn't get Southern Playalistic when it first came out. Actually, I didn't even cop or even think about copping the whole album until the second single. The second single was the title track, Southern Playalistic. That came out like in the summer, like might have been June or something. So I knew I liked Players Ball, but I was like, maybe I don't need this whole album, but this single is cool. And then Southern Playalistic dropped in the summer, and after that I was like, nah, I gotta cop this. Like, and I copped the album shortly after that. All right, so I get the album, I get the CD, and as soon as the album starts, like the Peaches intro, Peaches was Didi, aka Peaches, so that was one of OutKast's managers, as I understood it. But as soon as it starts in the intro, you know, she like welcomes everybody to Atlanta. So I'm 14 at the time. This is the first time I'm really hearing about, look, I didn't know what Compton was until I heard Straight Outta Compton. Like, you know, in New York, I knew all the different hoods because I'm from there. But, you know, this is kind of like, and there's no internet, like you're just learning about places. So that intro, that's the first time I'm hearing about like East Point, College Park, Decatur, you know, SWATs, you know, what's the SWATs? Why they keep saying the SWATs? I thought it was like the SWAT team and then, you know, Southwest Atlanta. I think I learned that like reading the credits, like they broke down what SWATs was. So, you know, it was like this journey to someplace new. So right after the intro, it flows right into the song is called My Intro to Let You Know. And at the jump, it's clear that these dudes could fucking rap. Like, okay, you heard Players Ball, you heard Southern Playalistic, and then My Intro to Let You Know. Like, it was kind of like the declaration. It was like, oh, these guys could fucking rap. Big went first, Dre had the second verse. And this is important to note, too, because when OutKast first dropped, I don't remember anyone from my group of friends, nobody on the radio, nobody in the barbershops, like nobody was debating who was better, Big or Andre. Like it was clear that both of these guys could fucking rap. Like it was a high skill level to both of them. They had distinct voices. Big was more nasally. Dre had a bit more bass to his voice and more of a measured tone, but it was clear they could both rap. And then they got better on ATLiens. They got better on Aquemini. And I honestly don't remember the debate about one being better than the other. And so after Speaker Box and Love Below, when they started to separate and Dre started like making himself more scarce, but doing more solo features. And he just became more in demand. So, and somebody, if you was there, if you was around during that time, you could debate me. I'm interested to know, but I know nobody in my group, in my circle, like we didn't even think about, who was better, Big or Dre. Like they were both killing it. And I think from my perspective, I think when Dre made himself more scarce and made himself more in demand, fans felt like, okay, he was the better one. But it was kind of like, you want what you can't have. So once he started getting more scarce on the mic, you're like, okay, this is the guy I want. So he became the better one. But to me, Big is just as nice as Dre. And honestly, I kind of feel like there's no way we can ever know this, but if they came out as soloists, we'd be talking about Big Boy as one of the greatest MCs to ever come out of the South in a more consistent manner. One of the best MCs in hip hop, period, in a more consistent manner. Because he is held in that regard by those who know. So I'm talking about in a more consistent manner if they came out soloists. But because they were in a group and things shook out the way they shook out, it kind of feels like we have to pick one. Like we're conditioned, like we have to pick one. But I never subscribed to that. But, other than, so right away, like lyrics stick out. Another thing that starts to stick out about the album very early in the track listing is the musicality. And this was before the Roots really blew up. The Roots were definitely around. They had Organics. Do You Want More was on its way out around this time. Like, I think it came out in 95, but there were like singles floating around and there were overseas versions. So the Roots were definitely a thing in 94, but they hadn't really blown up and they hadn't really made, like, the Roots are poster children for live instrumentation in hip hop. But OutKast a little bit before the Roots, like, at least for me, I could hear the instrumentation in the album. It didn't sound like the straight up samples. Like, you could hear live instruments from track one, and that's due to Organized Noise. And shout out to the late Rico Wade, Ray Murray, Sleepy Brown, Society of Soul, what appeared on this, and the way that the intro blends into the next song, Ain't No Thing, is just some amazing sequencing. It was like a lot of the tracks just bled into each other. The beats of Southern Playalistic, incredible. It's just like a live bass. You could hear the guitar licks. Call of the Wild was the first time that we was introduced to Goody Mob. Funky Ride was an original record, but it felt like one of those P-Funk records that Dr. Dre was sampled to make a rap record on the Chronic. Like, again, I at that time, I don't remember, like, OutKast wasn't on that record. Funky Ride just felt like it was a whole record on itself, but it felt like it was a sample. It felt like something my mother used to listen to that a rapper would sample instead of they just made their own original record. So, again, that's just like, these guys are just showing that they're different from anything happening in hip hop at that point. Then we go further down the track listening. Get Up, Get Out was another standout. Again, Goody Mob was on that again. And to me, that's where I really heard CeeLo Green. Like Call of the Wild was dope, but Get Up, Get Out, like CeeLo Green with the first verse, it was like, yo, who the fuck is this? Like, we got Dre, we got Big Boy, they're dope. But this, whoever's rapping, the first guy rapping on Get Up, Get Out is special. You know what I'm saying? And this track was like positive, motivational. This was like a KRS-One type record to me, at least at the time. That's why I can compare it to. It was kind of like your bigger brother putting you on to just how to live your life and give you jewels on how to live your life. Going down the track, listening a bit, Crumbling Herb is another track. To me, I think Crumbling Herb, to me personally, is a top 5 OutKast record, along with In Due Time from the Soul Food soundtrack. Those are two of my favorite OutKast records ever. I think Crumbling Herb is amazing. Then the album ends with Hootie Hoo and Deep. Just a dope way to end the album. Is classic. To me, Southern Playalistic is just one of the most important albums for hip hop because, it set off, again, like I said, what I believe to be the greatest group of all time. But it also opened the doors for at least me, but I feel like for the rest of the world, right? To really see Atlanta and really experience Atlanta, and then we see how important Atlanta has become to hip hop, and the years of dominance. And I wonder how different it becomes if we don't get this first OutKast album. And the impact of this album extends far past the music, the chart positioning, the sales. It went platinum like pretty quickly. But the album also spawned one of the most important moments in hip hop history when OutKast won Best New Artist of the Year. It was a group award. There was a Best New Artist of the Year soloist, and there was a Best New Artist group. So they won the Best New Artist of the Year. It was the group award at the 95 Source Awards, right, in New York. So I remember watching it on TV. It wasn't a live telecast. and it probably came on like midnight or 1 in the morning. It came on late, like they couldn't even find a prime time slot for it. But if you was in the hip hop, it was prime time, right? So I remember Smith and Wesson was nominated. I love Smith and Wesson, man. I love that The Shining album. Um, I was heavy into that at the first, when it first came out. But Smith and Wesson was nominated. Inland Out Scratch was nominated. Bone Thugs and Harmony was nominated. So this is before the first album. This was like the EP, I think. I don't even think the first album was out. So this is For the Love of Money. This is Thuggish Ruggish Pone. That was another thing that we was listening to. Shout out to my man Lou. He put me on the Bone Thugs. But so Smith and Wesson, Inland Out Scratch, Bone Thugs, and OutKast had won. And they was booed. And that's when Dre famously got up on that stage and said, man, the South got something to say. And, look, man, it was hard for OutKast to be accepted. They kicked down doors. Yes, New York booed them. But it's also important to remember, and I think that put a battery in their back, and a lot of people still reference that to this day. But they got a lot of love, too. I mean, they had a platinum album. I feel like not everybody in New York felt that way. I know me and my group of friends didn't feel that way. Like, we fucked with OutKast. But, what you got to remember, too, is there was a lot of tension at the 95 Source Awards because of the Bad Boy Death Row situation. I wasn't in the crowd, but it was like, if Wu-Tang is there and Wu-Tang got 100 people and Bad Boy is there and Bad Boy got 100 people. Nas was nominated. Nas got 100 people with him. Death Row was there. Death Row probably got, 50 people with him. It was just like a lot of tension, right? And you could see it throughout the telecast. So, I wonder if there wasn't that tension where OutKast had been booed the same way. Maybe. Maybe not. But, I just remember for me and my group of friends, we always was seeking out like different types of music. And Cass was amazing to us. But, looking back at it, when we talk about like being on the right or the wrong side of history, like for the people who was in that room at the Source Awards, like it got to feel crazy now that you fixed your face to boo two guys who will go on to be the greatest group in hip hop history. Like that's crazy, man. But hindsight is 2020. But I just want to take some time to salute Cass today. I thought that was important. Who knows? I don't expect this to get that many views. Again, I just needed a break from Drake versus Kendrick. We'll get back to that later. But like, how do you not stop time? How do you not stop the clock to salute the greatest to ever do it? If you haven't heard Southern Playalistic, the album is amazing. Please check it out. But these are just my thoughts. They are subjective. I try to keep it balanced. I try to keep it unbiased, but I'm human. At the end of the day, let me know what you think, man. I'm going to need y'all to like. I'm going to need y'all to subscribe. I'm going to need y'all to leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your favorite Southern Playalistic tracks, your favorite OutKast tracks, your favorite memories. I know I'll be right there with y'all. I try to respond to each and every comment as long as y'all not on some bullshit. But everybody who, you don't even got to agree with me. As long as you want to have a real good, productive discussion, I'm with it. So I'm right there in the comments with y'all. And to the next time, I'm going to be back. And I'm telling you, too, that comic book content is coming soon. A lot of y'all have been asking me for it. Definitely going to do a comic book episode for y'all, man. So stay tuned for that. All right. Peace.